Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome ladies and gentlemen. About 3.5 years ago, just around the time that COVID struck, there was another massive issue that snowballed into perhaps the biggest argument of Brahminism versus the Dalit story or the narrative, anti-Dalit narrative in the United States. The bedrock for SB 403 as a law. And it's finding its way back into Bharat, ladies and gentlemen. And it's the classic oppressor versus oppressed, which even Rajiv Malhotra ji and Vijaya Vishwanathan ji make a mention of in Snakes in the Ganga, saying how the classic racist narrative of black versus white has now translated into oppressor versus oppressed, and it's now transmorphed itself onto the Brahminism versus non-Brahmins. This kind of a narrative. And this is targeting educational institutions of Bharat who are churning the CEOs today who rule the roost in corporate America or across the world. So there are various layers. Caught in the thick of all of this is a gentleman who says, charge me if I am guilty, but why make me the scapegoat? So in this edition, in this conversation, after that longish intro, I am going to ask short questions and we're going to get this man to say his piece. Sundar Iyer, Namaskaram, Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you in Bharat, in our studios, and after quite a while that you have agreed to open up.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, what were the charges against you?
Yeah. I wanted to preface that question quickly, but I'm happy to be charged. I'm happy to be the scapegoat. I am happy to go to jail if I was found guilty of caste discrimination. My focus here to speak to the audience is to tell you to go read the truth. Do not believe me. I'm just one individual. Go read the court cases, read the truth. Now, to answer your question, there were 3 charges that the state of California leveled on behalf of a person called John Doe, who filed anonymously for caste discrimination. John Doe was somebody who was my batchmate, who I hired in a tech startup.
He was a batchmate from IIT.
From IIT Bombay, whom I hired into my tech startup that was funded by Cisco in the 2015 era. When he went to the state of California, the Civil Rights Department, which is the employment agency,
CRD.
The CRD, filed 3 charges, one for discrimination, that he was discriminated based on his caste, one for retaliation, retaliation is cause and effect, that he did something because of which I did something bad to him, and harassment. And harassment is a very severe charge. Yeah. It is about personal behavior. Calling somebody the N-word, for example, would constitute harassment. So there were 3 charges, and they personally laid harassment charges against me and another colleague of mine, Ramana Kompella.
Now, when did this charge come about? And what are the facts of the case? Did you really discriminate against John Doe? The court has quashed the charges. We must tell our viewers that the court has quashed all charges against him and Ramana. But there is a suit against Cisco that continues. So that's another matter. But let's come back to you. Tell me and go back to that moment when you first realized that you've been charged of something. What was your first thought?
Sure. Well, I mean, in terms of chronology, to keep it succinct and brief, when the state CRD came and told us they're going to charge us, we said, what are your charges, essentially? And they said, well, we're going to sue you for caste discrimination because John Doe didn't get the head of engineering position in my group. That's one of 3 leadership positions in my startup. We said that John Doe has never applied for the job. But we said, what is your actual charge? They said that John Doe is a Dalit, and I have not given him that position because I've discriminated against him because he's Dalit. Because he's Dalit or because you are Iyer? Well,
you are a Brahmin.
They essentially tried to allege both, right? Now, we pointed out that the position that you're claiming discrimination for, the head of engineering position, was also awarded to another person, a senior of mine, a brilliant guy, and also a Dalit. In fact, I wanted to point out something else. We told them that every leadership position in my tech startup, we had 3 leadership positions. The first head position, the second one, which is the head of engineering, and the third one, which is my own CEO position, were all awarded to the senior Dalit candidate in my group because of his merit. 2 of these positions were already awarded before John Doe even made his complaint.
So they were all Dalits. So actually, I should take you to court for discriminating against non-Dalits.
Well, if someone wanted to
I'm
make
saying
that
it
argument,
himself.
to be honest with you, if someone wanted to make that argument, they could go ahead, and that would be a more credible charge than the charge that the CRD is making. Now, interestingly enough, this is the sad aspect of the case. The CRD wants to hide all of that information. They hid that from the judge. They've hid that from the press. They've hidden that from the Dalits. The reason I'm here is to tell you that the CRD is lying, and is lying to the Dalits.
But this John Doe, his name is now out public, but you prefer to call him John Doe. He was your batchmate.
Correct.
He was part of your startup.
Yes.
And when you were bought over by Cisco, you made lots and lots of money. How much of that money did you keep? Did he perhaps have a thing that you didn't share the wealth with?
I mean, interestingly enough, this was my 4th tech startup. And when I started the company, I had already told Cisco that I'm writing off 100% of my equity in this startup to all of my employees, including John Doe. This is public data from court records. John Doe made several $1 million in compensation because, of course, part of the reason being that I'd given away all of my equity. My equity compensation in this company is $0, the great word shunya that comes from India. Despite that, when John Doe didn't get a raise of a few $1,000s, he filed several internal complaints. And he went to the state, and the CRD lawyers sided with John Doe, claiming that John Doe had low pay. If you want to talk about moral turpitude, I ask you, CRD lawyers, not one of you in 8 years has had the bloody ethics to look back at the compensation that John Doe is making. You've not been true to the press. You've not been true to your own activists that you work with. You've not been true to the Dalits. What I'm concerned about is a government agency, the Civil Rights Department, ability to lie, everything from small white lies to suppression of information, all the way building up to reckless indifference to the truth and potential perjury. I've sent a letter which has more than 100 factoids about what the CRD has done, and there has been zero accountability on their part.
US media consistently says they always put a balanced version of equations.
Right.
They talk to both sides of the story. As State Department, Civil Rights Department, somebody who's going to prosecute you,
Yeah.
they should be talking to you because they should put you on the stand and they should grill you. And you're saying that you've not been spoken to more than 15 minutes.
And the 15 minutes is mostly rank and file questions. In fact, interestingly enough, I was asked my religion in this 15-minute interview. I mentioned to them that I'm irreligious. And you can check this, it's 20 years of data I've blogged about. I just simply don't practice religion. They had no qualms painting me as a Hindu and a Brahmin, in that, and Brahmin being defined as a Hindu caste. By them, not me. They had no qualms. It's just, if you want to lie, I would expect the CRD to be a little subtle about it.
But do US laws recognize classification of Hindus as a religious group and their groupings as castes, etc., etc.? Or did they just decide that they want to call you and put you into this group?
Well, obviously they've decided to call me and put me into this group, but what's worse, remember the First Amendment allows you freedom of religion. You interview me. It's one thing to come up and throw an identity on somebody, but you interview me. You ask me my religion, I tell you I'm irreligious, you still make it up. How bad is that? And that's just one amongst 100 such things. But forget me, I mean, to me this conversation is not about me at all. I am roadkill as far as the CRD is concerned, and that's okay. I'm not here to talk about John Doe, it's okay. I'm not here to talk about Equality Labs. Good luck to you, Tenmoy. You're welcome to do whatever you want. I respect the First Amendment. But how does a state agency pull this off? Give you an example. The state agency working with Equality Labs uses survey data that basically makes a claim that there are 10,000 Dalits, roughly 26% of all Dalits. And if you look at estimates by Equality Labs, that would be any number between, let's say, 4,000 to 40,000 easily. You have thousands of Dalits who've been physically assaulted and raped, is that statistic. There's not one police record about that. The state makes this case 8 times in trial courts, pushes this information in the appeals court, gets kicked back to trial courts. They will not back off from that. The judge throws all of this stuff out. Equality Labs makes the claim that there are 250 plus complaints of caste discrimination, including sexual assaults based on caste in the tech sector alone. Geez, if these numbers were true, that's terrible. Let's go fix it. I would love to, raise the flag for Tenmoyi and say, wow, let's give her the Nobel Prize if these numbers were true. But she makes these statements under penalty of perjury. But there's not a single record of this.
Whatever is happening in the US.
Yeah.
It's happening with you. What's happening from your perspective is unfortunate. From their perspective, they're fighting for justice. Somebody's raised a complaint, they're fighting. So there are two perspectives to it. I'm asking you, how does this in the long run come back to bite us in Bharat?
Sure.
And what was the link to SB 403?
Sure.
But more importantly, since you've been exonerated by the courts,
right,
why not get on with your life?
Sure. So let me answer the first question. As you said, the exoneration to me is irrelevant, right? And by the way, we didn't even have to go to the court. We filed a motion to sanction the state lawyers because they filed claims without a legal or factual basis, and they dropped the case after that with a lot of internal stuff that I cannot talk about, which shows even more of an Al Capone-like behavior by the state. But I only care about the ethics and morality of it. Look, I'm still an agent for Cisco. I know what has happened is wrong. It's injustice. I know the suppression of evidence that they have done. There are national security concerns here, just to give you an example. And I'll tell you why. The CRD is aware that the Equality Labs survey is unscientific. It in fact says that. It uses data from a web survey. You cannot verify the address of these people. You do not know the citizenship or residency of people from a web survey. And Equality Labs has not done anything to that effect. The demographics of the survey do not match the American demographics. They've dropped all information of people who said caste was not a big deal. Fine. They're a private organization. Good luck to them. But the state is pushing this narrative. Equality Labs was caught red-handed asking people to use the San Jose zip code for people who were out of the country. Right? The CRD knows that this data is absolutely polluted, right? It has nothing to do with the American demographic. They know this. They kept a blind eye to this when SB 403 was being passed and this survey was being pushed in legislature. You have American law being created using data that the CRD knows is absolutely and blatantly off, right? And they couldn't care less. Now, so you take an agency that has such a level of diatribe, xenophobic comments on Indians, pushing this agenda, that causes severe issues, right? I mean, if you look at Indo-US relations, the question I would ask is who has the back of Indian Americans? Clearly not the CRD. So where does this go? I've asked the governor that question, right? Someone's got to step in and fix this.
There was a lot of fight or pushback by Indian American groups across the board on this SB 403. Now, why is all of this happening in California, one? And now that it's stopped, it's dropped, what happens next? So I'm just trying to get to the crux of all of this. Somewhere one gets the sense that there was a larger narrative planned, there was a larger posturing, platforming that was done. What was the ultimate goal? And why is it happening in California?
Look, I've only had a sort of inside view to Californian politics in the last 8 months. What I've seen, to put it in simple terms, is disgusting. And I'll tell you why disgusting. Look, I don't care about the actual politics of it. I care about ethics. When I looked at SB 403, SB 403 has two prongs that matter. The data behind caste discrimination and the constitutional aspect of it. And I don't take a hardline view of yes or no, whether, adding a caste law is a good or a bad idea. Let's have the conversation. Let's look at it objectively.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the data is false. Everyone knows that. I have not seen a single legislator, barring a few who finally stood up, ask critical questions. I asked people in the California Democratic Party, just ask critical questions of the data being presented to you. That's your ethical job. Not one person did it. Not one within the progressives of the Democratic Party. That's sad. Look, we all want the truth to win. When you have an political sort of legislatures who are so afraid either to ask the truth or drinking their own Kool-Aid, you have a much bigger problem. The problem in California politics is not about Indians or caste or anything else. It's a much broader problem. It's a problem of truth. You may push a bill and you may win by bullying your way through That's unfortunately life. But you must be ethical about it. And I have yet to see someone who was open to do that, because many of them are afraid. Many Californian Democrats, to be blunt, are afraid of standing up to their own party. You know, in hindsight, it doesn't bother me. It's unfortunate, it's life. If I was sued by John Doe's lawyers, that's fine, that's life. But a state agency must uphold ethics. And my focus in life is to bring this agency to justice, to task.
Keep the fight on and keep on fighting, because you're fighting for the truth to be out and for the state to do the right thing, take the right stand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sundar.
Yeah.
Lovely
Thank you,
speaking
Anand.
with
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.